Next, we have the mining industry in South Africa. Manganese in the lead by Mr. Gautam Kumar. Mr. Gautam Kumar, as most of the people know here, started his career with Tata Steel. After serving for about 26 years with Tata Steel, he joined as director with Asia Minerals.
What the subject or the topic which I am talking today is quite, slightly different. Our chairman IFAFA, Manish Sharda, had told me one day that, look, you need to talk something on the various news articles which are coming on various aspects of South Africa. So I said, what do I talk? He said, no, there are many news items considering the manganese industry or the mining industry or the transport industry. So you collate everything and talk about the South African thing. So that is how my topic here is. Basically, I would be talking on the manganese mining in South Africa. Despite the fact that there are many constraints in the mining industry, till now people are talking, yes, very good, ore is coming, people are making into alloys, using it in steel. But for getting that ore, how much of difficulty, how much of challenges go in, how the support from various sectors are required, that is what is mining. Mining in South Africa is not doing that well what it was doing 10 years back. But still, we'll find that out of all the manganese, all the mining in South Africa, manganese is still doing better. So that's why the subject, manganese in the lead. So my contents would be a little, I dwell on the South African economy. Then the next one would be on the mining industry performance. Then the third would be the problems with the whole industry, whole of South Africa is facing, Eskom status in the power supplies. And the fourth one is the best part, that's the Transnet and port handling. And the fifth one would be new emerging miners in Postmasburg and Kalahari. And last, maybe I'll touch upon a little bit on the Kudumane mining resources. This is just a disclaimer, so whatever I say, you can just disregard it. The GDP in South Africa was worth 366 billion US dollars in 2018. If you see in 2011, it was close to 400. So you find that the GDP is going down. If you consider the GDP at constant price in terms of ZAR, the local currency, that also in the last quarter, means the first quarter of 2019, it has decreased compared to the last quarter of 2018. Although the decrease is very nominal from 3,160 billion to 3,133, but the trend is there. That look, we need to be cautioned that something has to be done. Otherwise, the trend is on a downward side. If you consider the GDP only from the mining industry in South Africa, it decreased again if you see in the last quarter of, the first quarter of 2019 compared to the fourth quarter of 2018, it decreased from 217 to 220 billion. But if you really see in the last 25 years or 26 years, it has averaged about 233 billion. So last 26 years average matches to the present level. But it was an all-time high of 251 billion ZAR in the last quarter of 2006, and a record low of 214 billion in the first quarter of 2009. The reasons of 2009 was obvious, everyone knows about it. Okay, mining industry performance is not good, but compared to the mining performance, how has manganese been doing in South Africa? If you see this, the figures are for the last 2 years only, which I am depicting here, is the total mining. If you see, it is 290 trillion ZAR. Out of that, 33 trillion is from manganese exports. It means the share percentage is about 11%, 11.5%. In the subsequent years in 2018, the mining and the mineral and energy exports of the performance reduced marginally from 290 to 287 trillion, but the manganese export increased from 33 to 47, or rather 48. So the manganese share increased from 11.5 to 16.7%, which is a big leap compared to the overall trend of downfall prevailing in South Africa. In terms of sheer volumes, the same thing has happened. Total is 190 billion, all mining, everything included, out of which manganese export is 15 billion. That has increased to 17, so not billion tons, million tons. That has increased from 15 million tons to 17.6 million tons in 2018, compared to a decrease in the volume of all the mining, minerals and energy. Eskom has been, I would say, a major bottleneck in the total production or the growth of South Africa. This is a trend being shown for the last 14-15 years, how the average price in cent per kilowatt hour it has been charging or it has been levying to the various industries. The various industries, I would say, when we talk about mining, it's here, but let's talk about the industrial. So from 14 cents, it has increased to about 79 cents. But if you concentrate what happened in 2008 or 2009, the figures in 2009 has tripled. Whatever figures of the power in terms of cents, which was being levied to the various industries in 2009, that has virtually tripled in 2017-18. These are the same figures put in percentage terms. Here again you'll find in 2009-10, the percentage increase in all the sectors for the power being levied, the power cost, increased by around 30%, close to that 30%. The least power increase was in 2017, but the consumers were not, means they were not safeguarded later on, because in 2019, the total power increase again compared to the previous year was about 13%. There were two increases. One increase was announced in October 2018 by NERSA, and the further increase was again approved. And finally, a total increase of 13.8% was there. If you see over the last decade, one decade, Eskom received an inflation power rate increase of around 350%. Today, the power situation is still not very good in South Africa. If you want to dwell on the reasons for the electricity crisis in South Africa, yes, there has been the major thing that no new high capacity private renewable power energy sources were set up who were made to generate power and sell to the national grid. And in their own projects of Eskom, there have been massive cost and power overruns, cost and time overrun, due to which again the prices got increased. Then the third is a local language used in South Africa. This is state capture. Means it's all the government inefficiency and the way they perform. And the government structure is actually not working quite efficiently in Eskom. Now I'll dwell on the subject of the logistics, which I think by far is quite efficient in South Africa. Transnet. This is the area of the mining of manganese in this area. Then there's Postmasburg, near the Port Elizabeth, Durban. Durban is basically for manganese, it's now a dying port. Then there's a Saldanha Bay. So the rail network is quite well connected from the northern Cape of South Africa, where most of the manganese ore of the country is located. This is some photograph, aerial view of the Saldanha Port Bay, which is quite efficient presently. Port Elizabeth, this is old port, but it has got a lot of terminals by different nomenclatures, and still by far today, I think more than 5.5 million tons of manganese capacity is there for exports. These are the historic figures of manganese ore movement by Transnet since 2014. And here you can see that over the years, in the last 5 years figure which are there, like Durban used to be a sizable quantity, now it is dying down, it has come down. Port Elizabeth in terms of BOT means the big one, and That has gone up, or it has remained consistent from 5 million to 5.5 million. Saldanha has picked up. It started in 2012, I think, for manganese. It was about less than 1 million in 2014, and presently it's doing about 4 million tons. So you'll find that from 10 million tons in 2014, the total movement by Transnet in the 5 years have increased to about 15 million. So about 50% increase in 5 million. So that really deserves kudos, and Transnets are really doing well. They have forecasted that in 2019, a minimum of 15 million, which was already achieved last year, will be transported by rail through various available corridors. And they also have done a trial movement through Richards Bay Port, and they talk about this corridor handling about 5 to 6 million, but I have my own doubts on this. These are the various nomenclatures of the terminals. That is Durban. Durban has got 2, then Port Elizabeth. Port Elizabeth has actually got 1, 2, 3, 4 different nomenclature, MPT, then CT, then FPT, depending on the various warehouses and kind of loading which is being done. So you'll find that there's one port only where the ship loading is done by the conveyors, and that's the most effective. That's the PBOT. And the various capacities are mentioned. So totally, these ports are able to handle the entire capacity from there. There are plans of future expansion, or the capacities which are today located at 4 different terminals. They are planning to put all together in one place. And there you see the capacity may further be enhanced. So these are the various issues and the solutions which Transnet has planned, so that the new terminal in Port Elizabeth, which is the Eastern Cape of South Africa, and this project actually was supposed to start earlier, but it has already faced a lot of delays. But it is expected that by 2023-24 they will start this port operations with a minimum of 5 to 6 million tons, and gradually their plan is that all the manganese ore would now be only after some years be transported or exported from this terminal, and they're planning to have a capacity of 18 to 20 million ton per annum, but that would be their projections for 2028-29. Bulk manganese vessels have already been started loading at this terminal. Last year I think it started. I'll just show some 2 maps showing the locations and the different mines which are there in South Africa in terms of manganese. This is the Northern Cape, where most of the miners This is the Black Rock. This is also the airstrip. Black Rock airstrip vessels, Chwaning, Gloria, Asbang, Hotazel, Mukala. Green is planned mines. They have not yet started production. And Hotazel, York, Kudumane is the place. Amari, Sibelo, then we have got UMK, Mamatwan, Shipi, so all in line. This is basically the major manganese producers of South Africa, and they are located in Northern Cape. This is for the other side, Postmasburg, where Imang is an upcoming good big mine, big compared to this area. Dimang, the Diaro, PNG, Bishop, the Getapel. This may start after some time. So among the notable mining operations in the manganese in South Africa, one is Sibelo, that is in the Kalahari area, and Imang is in that Postmasburg. Imang, Lindimo, PNG, they are all one of the emerging miners, one of them. These companies are the ones who have got the rail allocations. But if you see, combine the Postmasburg area, and they move mostly by road, the total movement would be around 1.6 to 2 million tons per year. With the increase in demand and medium grade of manganese ore, some exploration activities have been recommended in recent years, and it is now felt that these mines will start producing.
Gautamji, can you please
Yeah.
give it?
That's all. And basically, as I told you, containers manganese export is around 100 to 150,000 tons per month. And this is about Kudumane manganese. This is our AML's mine, which is producing around 1.8 to 2 million. We plan to do the same level for the next coming few years. This is some photographs. Stockpile. This is another pit which has been opened called Hotazel. This is the rail loop. This is the typical specs which everyone knows. And this is for the Hotazel find. Thank you.
Thank you, Gautamji. We had interesting sessions with some good presentations. So we are constrained on time, but still would like to open for questions. Probably will take 1 or 2 questions. If anybody has any questions to ask, please go ahead.
Gautamji, this question is for you. You live in both sides of the world, South Africa and India, and you have seen both sides. My question, Gautamji, is very pertinent to the current slowdown as well. And going forward, we have seen the problems that we have in India, and we've seen the problems, as you showcased us, of South Africa. Specifically, the power prices, ESCOMs, price escalations. Going forward, we've seen some shift in terms of the manufacturing from South Africa into Malaysia. In the entire, sort of things which are happening in South Africa, as well as the problems that we already have in India, where do you see India going forward, in terms of the manganese alloys growth, as far as smelting is concerned? India's steel definitely is looking to go up in the coming years. So do you think that India will continue to remain one of the long-term suppliers of manganese alloys to the global markets? Or do you think that there will be a big shift in terms of manufacturing base out of South Africa into Malaysia or other areas, as we know that Iran is one of the cheapest sources of electricity that they are giving out, but because of sanctions, right now there is not much activity happening there. In short, what is the future for India?
Hello. Yeah, thank you, Manish. There are 2 things to be understood quite well. About 4 or 5 years back, when the manganese production bases were being established in Malaysia, it was said that the production dynamics or the dynamics would change. And that is what exactly is happening now, as it was mentioned there by alloys also, that close to around 600 plus 600,000 tons of manganese alloys is being produced out of Malaysia. So to that extent, some of the production bases located elsewhere would need to close down unless the growth of the overall steel industry is able to take care of this requirement. Certainly the growth of steel industry is not to the extent which will be able to take. So some production bases, as it's happening in South Africa, some production bases have already reduced production and some more would be reducing in future. Secondly, coming to India's ferroalloys industry, steel production in India will go at around 5 to 6%. That's the maximum till the next, I think, 5 or 6 years. In order to feed to the domestic requirement and be competitive for export, India is not, very kind of I can't see in the near future that India will keep on increasing its alloys. India has to be competitive, then only it can. Since India is not so competitive compared to probably others like Malaysia and the Middle East as well, so India's production of alloys should not increase to the extent it has been increasing over the past few years. Steel production in India is going to increase, that requirement of ferroalloys will also increase, but the kind of capacities which India has, and given the kind of competitiveness which Indians will have to face from the other producers of the world, I think it will be a difficult challenge for the Indian alloys industry to really grow from here. Thank you.
Anyone else? We can take 1 more question if there is any. No? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much indeed. May I request our distinguished session chair, Mr. Sandeep Kapoor, to kindly do the honors of presenting mementos as a token of gratitude to our eminent speakers. We present to Mr. Alois T. Harambure. Thank you very much indeed, sir, for that very informative presentation we had from you. To Mr. C.B. Atulkar. Thank you once again, sir. To Mr. Paul Despotis. Thank you very much indeed. And to Mr. Gautam Kumar. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Kapoor, for doing the honors. And may I request Mr. Manish Sarda, Chairman IFAPA, to kindly do the honors of presenting a token of gratitude to our session chair, Mr. Sandeep Kapoor, Marketing Manager, South 32. Thank you, Mr. Sarda. And may I request for a group photograph of the complete panel. And ladies and gentlemen, we are straight away moving into the next session, which is technical session 3. I would request everybody to kindly remain seated. We will just take a few minutes to do up the top table for the next session. Thank you. Chrome alloys and ore. And I have the proud privilege in inviting our distinguished session chair, Mr. D.K. Mohanty, Senior Vice President, Head Ferroalloy BU, Indian Metals and Ferroalloys Limited. Let's put our hands together to welcome our session chair of the session, Mr. D.K. Mohanty, who has been working with IMFA for the past 30 years and is also the managing committee member of ICDA. And I also now invite our eminent speakers, Mr. Franciscus Prince, Vice President Sales and Marketing, Elkem. A very warm welcome to you, sir. Ms. Sheraz Nafati, Executive Director, International Chromium Development Association. A very warm welcome to you, ma'am. Mr. M. Venkatesh, Senior General Manager, Sales and Marketing, Ferroalloys, Indian Metals and Ferroalloys Limited. A very warm welcome to you, sir. And I also invite our eminent speaker, Mr. Rohan Baid, Research and Insights Professional, Steel Industry Specialist, Steel Mint Group. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, this session is on chrome alloys and ore. And once again, the time duration is approximately 1 hour 15 minutes, which includes the opening and closing remarks by the distinguished session chair, presentations by all our eminent speakers for approximately 15 minutes each, and we shall have question and answers in the end if the time permits after all the presentations are over. With those words, I hand over to our session chair, Mr. D.K. Mohanty, to carry the proceedings of this session further with his opening remarks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Good evening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the last session of today's conference. So this will be on chrome alloys as well as chrome ore and related things. So in this session we have 4 presentations. So as we go along, I will introduce the speaker. And to start with, we have Mr. Franciscus Prince. So he is the Vice President, Sales and Marketing from Elkem. In 2004, he joined Elkem Carbon as Marketing Sales Director for Asia Pacific region, based in Shanghai. And he was appointed as Vice President for Marketing and Sales in Elkem Carbon at Elkem Head Office in Oslo since May 2008. During his period, he was responsible for marketing sales of all Elkem Carbon products globally as well as all products development in Elkem Carbon. From 2014 to 16, he assumed the position as General Manager of Elkem Shanghai to oversee Elkem's commercial activities in China. After that, he returned to Norway
to reassume his previous role as VP Marketing and Sales in Elkem Carbon. Today he is located at Elkem Carbon Global Offices in Kristiansand, Norway. So he will be, in fact, Elkem Carbon started with the Soderberg paste, which they celebrated this year 100 years, and he will be talking on that. I request Mr. Francois to give his lecture. It will be certainly very interesting.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Last week in Norway, we celebrated 100 years of the Soderberg electrode since its invention. We had a function, we had a technical seminar and a gala dinner in Norway, which was well attended from customers and business associates all over the world. Today I'll take you through a very brief introduction about Elkem, a short overview of the invention of the Soderberg electrode, further technology developments and also legislation impacting users of Soderberg electrode technology, and a little bit about Elkem Carbon. Elkem is a company that's more than 110 years old. It was established in 1907 at Fiskawerk in Kristiansand by Sam Eide, who was an industrial entrepreneur back in Norway back in the time. Today we have 27 plants worldwide, R&D department with more than 400 people and more than 6,000 employees worldwide. Elkem consists of 4 business divisions: silicones and silicon metal materials, which are the 2 big divisions, then also foundry products and carbon. We also have Elkem Technology, which only serves the Elkem plants internally. I think many of you will remember Elkem as a company that supplied furnaces worldwide and also as a ferroalloys company back in the 1970s, 80s and 90s. But Elkem has transformed into basically now a silicon and silicones company. Sustainability is very important to Elkem, and we've set ourselves a target to be carbon neutral, to have carbon neutral metal production by 2025. Also, innovation is an important focus in Elkem, with the focus on more advanced materials, lighter, stronger materials, also tailor-made alloys for reduced weight and improved energy efficiency. Silicon and silicones for renewable energy, electric vehicles, healthcare, digitalization, to mention a few. And then the latest is we also focus now on battery technology. I think this is a face that many of you are familiar with, the Soderberg electrode in operation. The idea of a self-baking electrode was born by this man, Carl Wilhelm Soderberg. He was an electrical engineer working in southern Norway at a foundry, and he became frustrated with the concept of changing the short electrodes after each cycle that they were melting metals in the foundry. So he came up with the idea of a self-baking electrode, and he used and he built a cylindrical form made from wood. He placed a steel rod inside, and he rammed carbonaceous material around that. Then the cylinder, after solidification of this paste that he developed, the cylinder was mounted inside the furnace, and the bus bars were connected to the steel rod in the to get the electric current flowing. Unfortunately, it failed because the bake paste continuously slipped off from the steel rod and it dropped into the furnace. Soderberg abandoned the idea and he joined Electrochemist, the predecessor of Elkem, as an engineer in 1930. But then a new guy came on board, Dr. Matthias Sem. He was appointed as the manager of research of the research department of Electrochemist, at Lysaker, which is a few kilometers outside of Oslo. During this time, Germany also imposed an embargo on strategic raw materials on Norway, and these included graphite and pre-baked electrodes, which mean that they were even more pressed to find solutions. So Matthias Sem and Carl Soderberg eventually continued with further tests in 1916, and they did several tests on baking a carbonaceous paste, or what we refer to today as electrode paste, and they managed to register the patent. It was also the first time that they introduced a steel casing to bake the paste in with the steel rod, and it was used initially in a 500 kilowatt furnace. However, development work had to continue in a larger furnace, and there was a 1.5 MVA furnace at Fiskawerk in Kristiansand. You may ask the question, where is Kristiansand? Now, you're familiar with Europe, and if we zoom in a little bit to southern Scandinavia, Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, you will see Kristiansand right at the bottom of Norway. Kristiansand is the 5th largest town in Norway today, with a population of 92,000 people. Here's some visuals of the first test electrodes during the test work in 1970 at Fiskawerk. Then the plant manager, Jens Wesley, and that's probably a name that you've also heard before, especially the more technical people amongst you using the Wesley constant when we design electrodes. He was very interested in this new concept of the self-baking electrode, and he was the plant manager at the time at Fiskawerk. He's also the person that introduced the concept of steel ribs, or fins as we refer to them today, and cutting the windows inside the steel fins to support the baked electrode. Also during this time, the composition of the pitch was improved. They basically lowered the viscosity by adding more pitch to find a better consistency for the paste when it's melted before solidification during the baking process. Then the initial breakthrough came when they demonstrated between 18 and 25 November 1918 that they could operate the furnace continuously with this new technology. Jens Wesley also designed a water-cooled electrode holder. And here is also some visuals of the first casings that were used during that time. And it's pretty much what we do today, after 100 years. So they installed 850 millimeter diameter electrode on a ferrosilicon furnace, a single-phase furnace, in July 1919. They invited the international team as a commission to observe this test. There was a Professor Richards from the Lehigh University in the United States who came with a team to observe this. They approved this technology, and it was decided to name this technology after Carl Wilhelm Soderberg, the Soderberg electrode. But at the same time, Dr. Matthias Sem and Jens Wesley were also officially accredited as co-inventors. On the left-hand side, you see an example, or actually a print of the original patent that was registered. So more than 200 of these patents were registered in 58 countries eventually. The Soderberg electrode was marketed by the technology department of Electrochemist under the guidance of Matthias Sem. And the Soderberg electrode also became the basis for technological development and future growth of the later Elkem. More than 450 furnaces were designed and constructed by Elkem. More than 550 electro systems were installed in more than 46 countries over several decades. Unfortunately, Elkem stopped supplying furnaces in the mid-90s, and Elkem technology was only focusing towards internal requirements inside Elkem. So continuous technological development since the invention of the Soderberg electrode over the years. You can see here a visual from 1929 at Viscawerk. Also a furnace rebuilt in 1980. And on the right hand side you see a very recent picture of a rebuild of a calcium carbide furnace in the United States. And you can see it's markedly different from the initial Soderberg electrode. Today the largest electrode that we know of is a 2.1 meter diameter electrode that's installed on a 135 MVA furnace, operating load 105 megawatt. It's a ferrochrome furnace in Tornio in Finland. This is the modern Soderberg electrode, and today you can see how advanced it has become in terms of the water-cooled mantle, the whole assembly of the pressure ring and the contact lamps. And today Soderberg electrode technology is used in submerged stock furnaces for the production of a variety of ferroalloys, also including platinum and copper, as you can see from there. So also electrode base shapes and sizes have changed over the years, and you can see how it was applied. I think most interesting is to see the drums that was used to supply the cylinders back in the 1960s. You can think for yourself today it will be a very expensive option, but I think back then they treated it as gold. So just three more technologies that were developed, especially in the 1980s and 90s, and one of them is the Bruff technology that was developed by Elkem for silicon furnaces. It's an in-situ pre-baking electrode system developed for submerged stock furnaces. It's an adapted Soderberg technology, and it was initially installed on a silicon furnace at Elkem Visca in Christiansand back in 1983. The application, however, is limited in terms of diameter and subsequently the size of the furnace, since you need to get efficient baking of the core inside the electrode as well. But today we use this technology for producing pre-baked electrodes at our plant in Brazil. Then the composite electrode for silicon production. It replaces, the whole idea is to replace the costly pre-baked electrodes. And I think many of you have seen the development in the last 2 years of the availability and the cost escalation of pre-baked and graphite electrodes. The technology is based on a graphite core in the center surrounded by electrode paste. It's also an in-situ baking process, very similar to the Bruff electrode. About a third of the electrode comprises the graphite core, and 2/3 is the baked electrode paste. The benefit of this technology is that you can build larger silicon furnaces, or furnaces for silicon production, and which means that you need larger electrode diameters. And I think we all know that pre-baked electrodes have their limits in terms of diameter. Then lastly, the development of the Elkem modular electrode holder. It's very popular in China today, but it didn't really take off in the rest of the world. And the whole idea of this technology was to have a contact unit that can fit any electrode diameter. And the principle is basically where you have electrical contacts and the spring-loaded slipping units on the same unit. And these are connected to the fin extensions on the outside of the electrode casings. The spring-loaded units also replace the traditional contact clamps that's used in submerged stock furnaces. Also important, application of advanced modeling software is essential for optimized electrode operation, and we use this extensively in Elkem and also to support our customers. Then a topic that's become a very hot topic, and that is the use of coal tar pitch. It's becoming more and more of a swear word, and already REACH, who is the controlling body of pollution in the European Commission, has set strict targets. By October 2020, the use of coal tar pitch outside furnaces, in other words at tapples and in tapping launders as well as in ladles, will no longer be allowed. Electrodes has been classified as a Soderberg for use in Cederberg electrodes, coal tar pitch has been classified as a substance of concern. No deadlines have been put as targets by the European Commission, but we will expect that will happen in future. That will come. We also have now Keirin in Korea, and we expect that other developed countries who will normally take the lead, like Australia, Canada, Japan, New Zealand, will also follow suit. What we're doing in Elkem is to try to develop a non-hazardous Cederberg electrode paste, and the idea is to reduce the exposure of the operator and to have minimum risk towards the customer. Electrode paste is the most challenging of all these products. The first product we developed was a ramming paste to be used in aluminium pot cells, and that has been used now very successfully in the United States and Europe and also in the Middle East. And we're also now making progress with that in China. However, there are very strict requirements on the electrodes, which makes this very difficult. You need to focus on parameters like the thermoviscous behavior, electrical and mechanical properties of bake material, and chemical integrity of the bake product. That is very important to have a sound electrode. So something on Elkem Carbon. Today Elkem Carbon delivers high quality products and tailor-made services to the pyrometallurgical industry, in the ferroalloy industry or furnace related industry. We have the Cederberg and pre-baked electrodes, and also the monolithic lining concept that was developed by Elkem, and the repair paste that's used in tapples and tapping runners. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the ramming paste that's used in the pot cells for primary aluminium production. Yes, an image of products that's produced in Elkem today. I think Elkem is most well known for electrode paste. And very important is to continue with research and product development. Need to adapt to changing requirements by customers, and we try to be on the forefront of that. We have a fully equipped carbon laboratory in Kristiansand at Fiska, and this is very useful to support us where we can continue with development work, especially with the green binders that we need to work with. And then Elkem has a global presence. Today we have 6 plants, Elkem Carbon. In the traditional plant is Elkem Carbon Fiska in Norway, Carbo Industrial, the electrode and paste plant in Brazil, and Carbo Derivados, which is the pitch distillery. Then we have the joint venture in South Africa, Elkem Ferrofeld, Elkem Carbon China, and our latest addition since 2014, Elkem Carbon Malaysia in Sarawak, serving the new investments over there. Then there's a picture to show how Kristiansand or Fiska Werk has developed over the years from 1907 until to the plant, the site that is today. And today we have Elkem Carbon, the whole research facility of Elkem, and also the solar plant, which used to be Elkem but is now Rex Solar. But I think the future is looking bright for the Cederberg electrode, and we're looking forward to the next 100 years. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Prince, for your detailed presentation from the invention of Cederberg electrode till now and Elkem's involvement. Thank you very much. So our next presentation is on global chrome scenario. It will be presented by Ms. Saraj Nepati. She is the Secretary General of International Chromium Development Association. She has more than 12 years experience in chromium industry and has been an integral part of ICDA during this year. She has a master's degree in international affairs from the University of Rouen in Haute Normandy, and a management degree from Institut Business School in Fontainebleau in France. Over to you, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your introduction. And also I would like to thank IFAPA for inviting us and offering us this opportunity to present today. So some are celebrating 100 years, ICDA is celebrating 35 years. So who we are, ICDA stands for International Chromium Development Association. So the organization has been established in 1984 upon industry initiatives. And the ICDA is also having a very special bond with India because IMFA is amongst the founding member of the ICDA in 1984. So currently we have 110 members across the world and across the chromium industry value chain. So what's our mission? What are we doing? What are our values? The ICDA as an industry organization is not selling any industry product, but our mission is more global and supporting our industry. So we do support the industry through regulatory watch. We do provide support for all the environmental and sustainable issues. We also help our industries developing the market, finding new applications for chromium, protecting chromium applications. We also share scientific and technical information through weekly market research, quarterly reports, and statistics that we collect directly from the market. So we offer a full service to our members and provide some benchmark knowledge. And also the ICDA is a great place for networking because once you are in the network, you are amongst the global chromium industry network. So this is our council. The ICDA is fully managed by its industry. There are, I'm pretty sure, some familiar faces. Mr. Moranti is part of our board. We also have Mr. MC Thoma, who is member of the ICDA board. And currently our organization is chaired by Mr. Peroulis, who is the CEO of Tarissa Minerals, and our VP is from Yildirim Group Company. So here are our members, about 110 from many countries. We have members from China, members from India, from Japan, from South Africa, from Zimbabwe, everywhere where is chrome or whenever there is an interest in chromium, you can find the ICDA presence. So I will give you a brief market overview. Since we are an industry organization, we can't go into details, I would say company details or pricing, but the information that we have is collected through our members. We have a dedicated service at ICDA because we have a market research service that we offer to the members. And I will also invite you to join our conferences as well in order to get further information. So what's on in the chromium industry currently? This is the questions I'm hearing from most of you. I can see that so far it's not going so well. And most of the market players are more in a wait-and-see attitude currently. And there are so many factors. The demand for sure, but also all the geopolitical situation that makes that today the prices are declining and they're reaching 2007 level in the first half of 2019. So let's take a look at the global chrome ore production. Even though the situation seems not to be so well, we can still say that there was an increase in the overall chrome ore production from 2017 to 2018, an increase by 11.3%. The majority of the grade that is produced amongst the chrome ore production is metallurgical grade. So for some of you who are not familiar with chrome, there are many grades. You have the metallurgical grade, which is the most common grade, and also the chemical grade, which is used in all the chemicals applications. Chemical applications only 5% of the chrome industry, but it represents many employment opportunities and also many businesses. The most known one is the leather industry, because you use chromium salts for tanning leather. So for this presentation, we are going to focus on the metallurgical grade. So most of the metallurgical grade is used in metallurgical application, and most of it then goes into the high carbon ferrochrome production, which is then used for stainless steel 77% of the high carbon ferrochrome is going into stainless. So no chromium, no stainless, you know it. You need chrome to make stainless. And stainless steel and chromium are highly correlated. So if you want to analyze the chromium demand and the ferrochromium demand, you also need to analyze the stainless steel and vice versa. So this is an overview and some trends, country trend. You'll get the presentation, so you can go into all the details, and if you need any further figures, don't hesitate to ask me. So South Africa so far, and even for the first half of the year, 2019, still is the main chrome ore producer. It is then followed by Kazakhstan, and India is the third world largest producer for chrome ore. Then followed by Turkey, Finland, and Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is back. We had a conference in Zimbabwe in May this year. We'll see what's going on with Zimbabwe, but it seems that there are many things ongoing, and the new government is also willing to develop further the local industry, including the ferrochromium. So UG2, you can't talk about chrome ore if you don't speak also about UG2. What is UG2? UG2 is a platinum byproduct, but still it's ore, it's chromium. And over the years with chrome ore prices, you have seen an increase in UG2 consumption because some ferrochromium producers find UG2 as a more cost-effective alternative to buy chrome ore. So now if you look at South Africa chrome ore production, UG2 is representing 28% of South Africa chrome ore production and 16% of the overall chrome ore output. So we will see now with the chrome ore pricing slowing down and decreasing whether this trend is going to continue or not. And this is just looking at South Africa because it's a major chrome ore producer. So it represented 56% of the total global output in 2018 and 57% in the first half of this year. So, well, it's a question I wanted to ask you, but we all have the answer. Who are the major chrome ore importer? It's China. And China has no ore. China has no chrome. There is no chrome in China, even though China is now investing in mines everywhere in South Africa and also in Zimbabwe. So China is driving the demand for chrome ore currently, representing 88.3% of the chrome ore imports for the first half of the year. And last year, China imported 84% of the chrome ore production overall. So the major exporter, of course, is South Africa. India is not exporting any chrome ore because of the chrome ore ban and so making ferrochrome. So South Africa is the major exporter of chrome ore. Turkey, you also have Kazakhstan and Zimbabwe as well, is now exporting chrome ore. You need to know that Zimbabwe is holding 12% of the chrome ore reserves, so making it the second country with chrome ore reserves after South Africa, which is holding 75% of the world's chrome ore reserves. Now let's take a look at ferrochromium. So China is driving ferrochromium production. We estimate China capacity for ferrochrome about 12 million tons. But we realize that China currently is producing half capacity. China has never been producing at full capacity so far. This can be explained by environmental legislation, by the demand, and also you see many new projects in China with new plants, new technologies, so there might be some furnaces or some further consolidation or closure. But China still is currently driving the ferrochrome production. It is then followed by South Africa, then Kazakhstan and India, more or less at the same level and currently producing at full capacity. So in the early days of China, when they started to be under the ferrochrome production, you look at 2006, they were not producing that much. And then from 2012, China has been overpassing South Africa, becoming today the world's largest ferrochrome producer. And there are plans for increasing the Chinese capacity. So we're all wondering where the demand will come from. So on the country trend, the Chinese have been increasing their output by 6.5% from 2017, and South Africa by 7%, Kazakhstan by 4.7%, and India was a little bit down last year. So who is importing ferrochrome? China, even though they're producing, they're also importing ferrochromium. And for the first half of this year, they've been importing already 50% of their produced ferrochromium. Then you have Japan, Indonesia, also importing ferrochromium, and South Korea, USA. So then a question for you. Who is the major ferrochromium exporter? South Africa, for sure. South Africa still is exporting some ferrochromium, even though China is trying to be self-sufficient in terms of ferrochrome. Still needs South Africa, and also South Africa is exporting ferrochromium in other countries. Then you have Kazakhstan and India. So India is the third ferrochrome exporter worldwide. So here you have a little breakdown. So if you take a look at India, India is exporting ferrochrome to China. Then South Korea, Japan and Taiwan are the major buyer of the Indian high carbon ferrochromium. And this is for the first half of the year. So how chromium contributes to the Indian economy? This is, for example, as an example of a study that the ICDA can be commissioning. We've been commissioning a socio-economic assessment recently on some of the major chromium region, and it included India. So we analyzed data from 2010 to 2017, and average indirect and direct contribution to the economy by the chromium industry was estimated to $6.3 billion. And in terms of employment opportunities on the same period, we estimated that it created 257,900 employment opportunities, and with a majority of indirect employment opportunities. So we can also say that chromium and the chromium industry is beneficial for the economy in the chromium producing countries, because it creates employment, it creates wealth for the economy and for the people. So, you want to know more about chromium? We invite you, and we also invite our IFAPA friends to attend Chromium 2019 on 5th-7th November, same city, New Delhi, different place, celebrating 35 years of the ICDA. And I will not say more about the organization. We have a video that explains a little bit who we are, our mission and values, and I hope you like it. And don't hesitate during the Q&A session to ask me any question that you want. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, for the good presentation in details about ICDA.
Minerals and metal. Like the minerals and metals that have improved our lives, the world is full of raw potential. Potential for sustainable growth, empowerment, and success. This potential can only be realized when tempered with the right knowledge and expertise. Since its creation in 1984, the International Chromium Development Association has become the world's leading voice for the chromium industry. We encourage best practices and promote sustainable uses of chromium in all its forms, uniting the industry around the common goal of continuous improvement. In the same way that chrome is used as an essential ingredient in partnership with other natural minerals and alloys, The ICDA exists to bring together committed people, organizations, and knowledge for the advancement of our members across the chromium industry value chain. The ICDA's dedicated team offers the chromium industry a wide range of specialist services, including market research studies, scientific and socio-economic reports, and market development support. We work with leading experts and provide extensive networking opportunities for our members through various annual workshops and conferences. The ICDA is an industry community united by strong values, including antitrust compliance. Every member is held to the highest ethical standards. This shared vision of continuously elevating our standards and practices is at the heart of who we are, and we are committed to this approach across every facet of the ICDA. The ICDA is committed to the chromium industry, our people, and our environment, for present and future generations.
Thank you. So, our next presentation will be on Indian chromer and ferrochrome. It will be given by Mr. M. Venkatesh, Senior General Manager, Sales and Marketing from Indian Metals and Ferroalloys Limited. He has been with IMPA for last 24 years in different capacities. He has handled various functions like domestic sales, logistics, and international trade. During last 5 years, he has been heading the sales and marketing function of the company. Venkatesh represents the company in the Market Intelligence Committee of ICDA and is one of the largest and fully integrated producer of ferrochrome IMPA. Thank you. Over to you, Venkatesh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to thank IFAFA for giving me this opportunity to speak today. I believe there are over 450 delegates who have been registered, if I'm not wrong. So this is one of the biggest conference what is held in the ferroalloys industry. So I would congratulate all the managing members of IFAFA for holding such a conference. Okay, going back to my presentation, speaking on the last session of the day, it's very tough. People are looking at the watches and looking behind if the bar has been set up or not. But we have to complete the formalities. Chromore is the starting point for ferrochrome industry, and with the Chromore auction coming up in 2020, it is interesting to see where the chrome industry stands. So today, I'm going to speak about the Chromore industry, the overview, challenges, and the outlook. This is the standard disclaimer. What I speak is my opinion, and IMPA should not be held responsible for any of that. If you look at the world Chromore reserves, it's estimated at around 9,200 million tons. South Africa and Zimbabwe hold more than 85% of the global Chromore reserves. India holds about 54 million tons in reserves, which is less than 1% of the global reserves. China, what Shiraz had mentioned a little while ago, has practically no reserves, but as we know, they're the largest producer of ferrochrome. Just to give you a global overview, Shiraz again had covered a bit of it. The global Chromore production in 2018 was 33.71 million, which was up by almost 11%. South Africa produces more than half the global Chromore production. India's share in the global Chromore production was about 13%. Chromore can be divided into 4 major grades, which is metallurgical, which all of us use for our ferrochrome production. Then we have chemicals, foundry sands, and refractory grade. About 94% of the Chromore produced is of the metallurgical grade. And metallurgical, we produce high carbon, low carbon, silicochrome, and medium carbon from this metallurgical grade. High carbon and charged chrome constitute about 94% of the global ferrochrome production, the balance being low carbon, medium carbon, and silicochrome. About 2/3 of the ferrochrome production, that is high carbon and charged chrome production, goes into the making of stainless steel. Now let's have a look at the Indian chrome ore industry. Chrome ore was first discovered in India in 1903. About 99% of India's reserves is in the Sukinda Valley, which we all know. The output in 2018 was 4.23 million tons, out of which 4.19 million tons was consumed domestically, which includes the stock, and about 40,000 tons was exported. Imports were about 135,000 tons, mostly from South Africa and Oman. The chrome ore producers in India can be categorized into two parts. That's the merchant mines and the captive mines. Like most of us know, the merchant mines can either sell the ore or consume it on their own, but the captive mines can only use the ore. So the merchant mines are OMC, Tata Steel, BC Mahanti, Mishri Lal, and IDC. Captive mines are Balasore, Fakar, Infa, Jindal, Stainless. If you look at the lease area, OMC holds more than 6,200 hectares of chrome ore lease area. Of course, they only operate on a very small area. Tata Steel holds about 406 hectares of area. In India, we do mostly open cast mining, but Infa has already started large-scale underground mines in their Mahagiri mines. Between 2015 and 2018, the production of chrome ore went up by 1.3 million tons. If you look at in this same period, while the captive mines production went down by 16%, the merchant mines production went up by 77%. This is not much of a surprise looking at 3 of the merchant mines lease expiring in 2020. There has been always a government focus on value addition. As we know, ferrochrome is manufactured from chrome ore and is one of the vital inputs for stainless steel. In order to make ferrochrome available for domestic ferrochrome producers, various measures have been taken by the government, starting with canalizing exports through MMTC in 1995, to imposition of export duty of rupees 2,000 in 2007. This duty was increased to rupees 3,000 in 2008 and further revised to 3,000 rupees or from 3,000 rupees to 30% ad valorem. If you look at the exports after the imposition of export duty, the exports have come down sharply. At one point of time, about 52% of India's output, chrome ore output, was being exported, but today it is less than 1%. A brief about ferrochrome. Ferrochrome was produced in India for the first time in 1967. The industry currently is relatively consolidated. 5 producers, namely Tata's, Jindal, Infa, Balasore, and Fakar, produce almost more than 80% of the output. About 1.3 million tons was produced in 2018. Some figures say 1.4. Roughly about 700,000 tons is exported out of the country. And most of the export is to Far East. That includes China, Japan, Korea, and Taiwan, looking at logistic advantages. Going ahead, we feel that the exports are going to come down as the stainless steel production in India picks up. If you look at India's position in the chrome industry, as I mentioned before, we are the 6th largest, in terms of reserves, we have the 6th largest. South Africa, Zimbabwe, Kazakhstan, Turkey, and Finland are ahead of us. In terms of chrome ore production, we are the 3rd largest after South Africa and Kazakhstan. And in terms of ferrochrome production, we are the 4th largest after China, South Africa, Kazakhstan. The industry faces a lot of challenges. We have very low deposit, again, as I told earlier, which is less than 1%. We have the lowest per capital reserve ratio. The per capital reserve ratio, as you see from the chart, is 0.05%. There has been an increase in levies, DMF and NMET. Everybody knows this. This has really increased the cost of chrome ore. We have to manage multiple stakeholders. That would include the central government, state government, local bodies, many others. Logistics at the mining area is still a major challenge, specifically in the Sukinda area. All those who are working in the Sukinda area would be knowing. The cost is per metric ton per kilometer is ₹9, which is much higher than the standard norms of about ₹6.60. Also, there is a lot of political affiliation, political interference in those areas. And very recently, the transportation of ore was almost off for 2 weeks. The outlook, the tenure after the new MMDR Act, the tenure has been increased to 50 years. This helps in investment, keeping a long-term view. Grant of all mines through auction. This brings about a very greater transparency. Auction in 2020, in fact, the auction could be held at the end of this year. This would change the industry structure. As we all know, 2 chromite ore mines have already been notified for auctions. We expect the chrome ore prices to go up in future. There are 2 reasons for it. The number 1 reason is at some stage, all of us have to get into underground mining, looking at the area of the mine, which is relatively small. And the second thing, all the resources which will be put up for auction will not come cheap. Going ahead, while I said, while presenting the ferrochrome slide, the ferrochrome industry is relatively consolidated, but this might change going ahead. We would see an increased number of ferrochrome producers. Today, there is a lot of production which happens through conversions. Now, all the production which happens through conversion, I wouldn't say all, but many of those conversions which are, many of the production which is coming out of conversions may become independent producers. In conclusion, given India's minuscule share of global chrome ore reserves, it is necessary to preserve it for domestic value addition. Follow the Chinese model of long-term mineral strategy. They are the largest producer of iron ore but do not export. Value addition is the key to sustainable mining. It ensures equal benefits to corporate and society. Opportunities, challenges, and competitiveness depend upon access to resources and the level of leverage. Level of leverage is again very important in today's world. The key event is the 2020 mining auction, where all of us are looking forward to. Thank you.
Thank you, Venkatesh, for covering Indian chrome ore scenario. Now we are coming to the last presentation of this session. This will be on pricing dynamics of the ferroalloys industry, and this will be presented by Mr. Rohan Baid, Research and Insight Professional, Steel Industry Specialist from Steel Mint Group. Steel Mint has an established track record in analytical commodities research across different verticals of the global iron and steel industry. Mr. Rohan Baid is leading a team of analysts across locations in undertaking research and analytic, specializing in market dynamic pricing, supply and demand in the iron and steel industry. Over to you, Mr. Baid.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being present for the last presentation of the day. I'd also like to thank the IFAPA Managing Committee for giving me this opportunity. I'm going to begin with silicomanganese, as India is the biggest exporter of silicomanganese in the world. This chart depicts the pricing, monthly average Indian export pricing, along with the USD to INR exchange rate, as currency fluctuations are key to FOB pricing. So we see that this chart depicts that Indian silicomanganese export prices remain mostly range bound over the past 1 year period, with demand largely being dented. There are possibilities of further price cuts because of weakening demand for finished steel amid a global economic slowdown. Overall, Indian silicomanganese export prices stayed depressed on the back of output overcapacity, with demand persistently failing to match supply volumes. The next slide shows the domestic price movement, monthly average domestic price movement. Indian domestic silicomanganese was priced highly in Q3 of CY18 due to higher manganese ore prices. Thereafter, we see that Indian domestic prices for silicomanganese continue to soften in the last 10 months, with producers continuously cutting down prices amid low demand and thin trading owing to the country's sluggish steel market. It is anticipated that prices may continue to trend downward as the downstream markets for finished steel products continue to remain under pressure. The next slide shows Indian silicomanganese exports month-wise. We see India's cumulative silicomanganese exports decreased by 11% year-on-year in the first 7 months of this year till July as compared to the corresponding period of last year. This slide shows Indian silicomanganese exports country-wise. UAE, you can read this as Iran, Japan, Malaysia have been the top 3 countries to import silicomanganese from India so far this year, together constituting to almost 40% of India's total silicomanganese exports in 2019. UAE increased imports of Indian silicomanganese in July by 8% month-on-month. Malaysia, Taiwan both increased their imports from India in the month of July as compared to June. This is a pie chart showing the country-wise breakup of India's silicomanganese exports. There's also some imports that have taken place. Indian domestic ferroalloy industries encountering imports of manganese alloys, including silicomanganese from Malaysia. India's silicomanganese imports were highest in May this year, hitting a 2-year high, particularly because of availability of Malaysia's high-grade silicomanganese at low prices. And they stand to benefit from the free trade agreement where there is no duty. Moving on to ferromanganese. This is the monthly average export prices of ferromanganese. Indian ferromanganese export prices have been gradually edging down this year after having remained mostly flat in the latter half of 2018. An overt indication of strong buyer's resistance coupled with widespread expectation of further price declines saw trading activities grind to a halt. Even as price levels decline, the offers are still not being welcomed by buyer-side participants as bearishness over steel fundamentals remain. This has caused several ferromanganese producers to either reduce or cease operations in the face of soaring input costs against staggeringly low selling prices. Moving on to domestic prices of ferromanganese in India. Indian domestic ferromanganese prices fell significantly in the midst of low demand and thin trading activity. Producers are wary of prices falling further as Indian end users are more inclined towards Malaysian and South African imports, which is why production is also at a lower level. Many producers have already shifted to other commodities as the market is highly influenced by imports. This chart depicts Indian ferromanganese exports month-wise. We see the cumulative ferromanganese exports increasing by 4.5% year-on-year in the first 7 months of the year till July as compared to the corresponding period from last year. This is the country-wise breakup of exports of ferromanganese. We see UAE or Iran constituting to more than 50% of India's ferromanganese exports. There have been some imports as well. Indian ferromanganese imports have decreased marginally in July, but on a year-on-year basis, the country's ferromanganese imports have increased by 18% in the first 7 months of this year till July, as compared to the corresponding period of last year. Moving on to ferrosilicon. Ferrosilicon global prices have fallen persistently since last year, in line with reduced offer prices amidst a weakening downstream demand in the international export markets, which is unlikely to improve in the near term. Chinese ferrosilicon export prices are likely to move down further in light of weaker consumer demand against the backdrop of plentiful supplies because of higher production capacity in China. Domestic monthly output of ferrosilicon has increased since last year, following a rise in the output capacity. Many international consumers are buying from Russia, Malaysia and other countries because of lower prices. New ferrosilicon production plants are recently being launched in countries like Indonesia. In the domestic market, Indian domestic ferrosilicon prices maintain the downward trend in an oversupplied market due to lack of buying activity, given the tumbling steel prices and dampened sentiments. Moreover, the Indian domestic ferrosilicon prices remain under pressure from constrained demand from stainless steel. Furthermore, Indian stainless steel mills are buying hand-to-mouth currently, and this poses a serious threat for the ferrosilicon prices in the organized market. Looking at the month-wise exports of ferrosilicon in India, Indian ferrosilicon exports have decreased by 43% month-on-month in July as compared to June. However, when compared on a year-on-year basis, India's cumulative ferrosilicon exports have decreased by 23% in the first 7 months of this year till July, as compared to the corresponding period of last year. Bangladesh, Italy and Brazil have been the top 3 countries to import ferrosilicon from India so far this year, together constituting about 36% of India's total ferrosilicon exports in 2019. This is the country-wise breakup. India's ferrosilicon imports have increased by 8.5% month-on-month in July. However, on a year-on-year basis, the country's ferrosilicon imports have decreased slightly by 2% in the first 7 months of this year as compared to the corresponding period of last year. Most of India's imports of ferrosilicon comes from Bhutan, accounting to about 53% in July. China is the second biggest exporter of ferrosilicon to India with 22% share. Moving on to ferrochrome. Global ferrochrome export prices rose in the first quarter of this year in line with increased demand due to supply shortages due to widespread power outages in Inner Mongolia region of China. Further positive consumer demand post the Chinese New Year holidays kept the global prices supported. However, the Indian ferrochrome export prices have continued to fall throughout the past 4 months, with producers continuously having to lower their offer prices to solicit trade, especially as the Chinese buyers scouted for lower priced offers. And despite the Indian export offer levels being low in dollar terms, demand from stainless steel producers in China, Japan, South Korea remain lackluster. In the domestic market, Indian ferrochrome prices started falling since April 19 in line with oversupply and subdued demand. Previously, however, the depreciating Indian rupee and the lower stock levels had kept domestic ferrochrome prices at elevated levels. Indian domestic ferrochrome prices have increased recently with the news of ore dispatches being halted due to a strike of truck association in the country, main producing area of Jajpur. Presently, Indian domestic ferrochrome producers are low in inventory as the chrome dispatches had stopped for a while. However, a number of domestic ferrochrome producers have also reduced their production levels, while a few major industries had also been shut down. Month-wise ferrochrome exports, Indian ferrochrome exports have increased by 11% year on year in the first 7 months of this year till July as compared to the corresponding period of last year. China, South Korea and Japan have been the top 3 countries to import ferrochrome from India so far this year, together constituting to about 77% of India's total ferrochrome exports. Chinese, it's the country-wise breakup of India's exports till July in 2019. Moving on to manganese ores, manganese ore prices were continuously went down since the start of the year in line with falling manganese alloy market in China, especially for lower grade material in the month of January, while silicomanganese prices in India increased. South African manganese ore prices reduced in line with falling alloy prices and depreciated Chinese yuan since April this year. Freight charges continuously increased as the shipping industry needed to shift to a costlier fuel or ramp up their present vessels to adapt with the new regulations of IMO 2020. Prices of carbonate ore rose in February in line with power shortage in South Africa and consequently led to some supply issues. In the domestic market, stock level of manganese ore is very low with Indian smelters, and the industry is struggling to find a balance between manganese ore prices and manganese alloy finished product. India's imported manganese ore market remained weak with sluggish demand on account of a weaker currency discouraging imports. This is the month-wise breakup of India's manganese ore imports. On a year-on-year basis, India's cumulative manganese ore imports have increased slightly by about 3% in the first 7 months of this year till July as compared to the corresponding period of last year. As you can see, more than 50% of India's manganese ore imports is from South Africa. This is the global monthly chrome ore prices. Global chrome ore offer prices have increased for September delivery in line with higher ferrochrome prices in China. Lack of demand of ferrochrome in China resulted in lower prices of chrome ore imported into China. This is the Indian chrome ore domestic price movement, which largely followed the ferrochrome prices. India's chrome ore imports have decreased by 27% month on month in July. However, on a year-on-year basis, India's cumulative chrome ore imports have increased by 18% in the first 7 months of this year as compared to the corresponding period of last year. This is the country-wise breakup of India's chrome ore imports, most of it again from South Africa. This is a disclaimer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. West, for presenting on all ferroalloys, mostly major ferroalloys and ores related to that, on pricing as well as import-export statistics. Thank you very much. Now I open the floor for questions, maybe 1 or 2, whoever would like to.
A very good evening. My question is to Mr. Venkatesh. And it is very interesting to know, conversion plants are using only chrome ore fines and producing ferrochrome. And I understand in IMFA, in all open furnaces, you are using both fines and lumps. At one end, we are thinking that we are not competent in the international market. At the other end, why it is forcing you to use lumps while other players are using only fines? Is there any particular reason, please?
Yeah, just to answer your question, this is more of a technical question of technical nature. I am not into production. So yes, I have some colleagues here.
No, I request you, please discuss with your metallurgists. Actually, we need in India an open platform for technical sessions also. Mostly I mean, in IFAPA, we are having platform for discussing the trade issues. But I request in future we will have more open forums to discuss technical as well, so that our industry will be competent in future. That is my request. Thank you.
I can supplement Venkatesh on this, basically. Whether you can use 100% fines or a proportion of lumpy, that all depends on what is available to you and which is most economically used. Economically doesn't mean usage of only fines, but other inputs. What is your recovery? You can charge 100% fines within the firm, but your recovery may not be proper. Your power consumption may not be proper. You have to strike a balance, and what is available to you based on that you need to work on. I think this is more a technical thing which need to be done.
In that case, actually, other producers who are following the conversion, they are able to achieve the same norms as you are achieving. That is definitely a technical discussion to be done. This is just an idea I am giving. You can explore it further. Thank you.
Thank you. If there is no more questions, let us close the session. Thank you very much, and thanks a lot to the speakers. Thank you very much.
Excuse me, sorry.
Please. Yes.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kabir, and I'm here from Afghanistan. I'm representing my company, Metal Mining UK Limited. Mr. Venkatesh, my question is for you. You mentioned that there will be auction in 2020.
Right.
And what I want to know is, when the auction goes online, can the companies from other countries like Afghanistan put their product on the website, on auction?
As the things stand today, foreign companies are not allowed to bid as far as chrome ore goes. I believe in the coal sector, 100% FDI has already been allowed. But in chrome ore and in this auction, it's clearly mentioned Indian companies. So I believe, I think so it's already a bit too late, because the last date was...
No, basically as for the already for 2 mines for which tender has been already declared. So as a company registered in India under certain section only can apply for it, nobody else. Thank you. Yeah, okay.
Mike. I come from China, Lucy Wang. We handle the ferroalloy business as well. So my question is, in China, the ferrosilicon, silicon manganese, and ferrochrome, with many years development, is already over capacity. So how about India? For ferrosilicon plants, silicon manganese plant, even ferrochrome plants, it's over capacity, or it's right to the number, or are there government to do some the policy to limit some the new production to operate? This is my question. Thank you.
Yeah, I think so. I'll join in if any other people wants to join in again. When you talk of overcapacity, I don't think, maybe in the manganese sector we are slightly overcapacity. Ferrosilicon in India, in fact, we are reducing capacity because we are not competitive. End of the day, it is not only capacity, it is also how competitive you are. So we are not competitive because looking at the high power tariffs, we are not competitive in the silicon sector, ferrosilicon sector. Manganese also, we need to import ore. Competitiveness will depend on your access to resources. So if you are competitive, that's what you have to see. It's not that capacity has to be seen. So capacity today, when we look at it, is I think so you can't really define. In chrome, we have more capacity, meaning we can produce more than what is required for domestic consumption. Similarly, in manganese, we can produce more than what is required for domestic consumption. I hope I can answer, that did answer your question.
Any more questions? Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together for all our speakers, for those wonderful presentations we had from them. As I request our distinguished session chair, Dr. Mr. D.K. Mohanty, to kindly do the honors of presenting mementos as a token of gratitude to all our eminent speakers. We present to Mr. Franciscus Prince, Vice President, Sales and Marketing, Elkem. Thank you very much indeed, sir, for the wonderful presentation we had from you. To Ms. Shiraz Nafati, Executive Director, International Chromium Development Association. Thank you, ma'am, for that presentation. It was very informative. To Mr. M. Venkatesh, Senior General Manager, Sales and Marketing, Ferroalloys. Thank you very much indeed. And to Mr. Rohan Bair, Research and Insights Professional, Steel Industry Specialist, Steel Midco. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Mr. Mohanty, for doing the honors. And may I once again request Mr. Manish Sarda, Chairman IFAPA, to kindly do the honors of presenting the memento to our session chair. Mr. Manish Sarda to kindly do the honors. Thank you very much indeed, sir, for wonderfully chairing this session. And may I request the panel for a group photograph? So, ladies and gentlemen, with that we close the technical proceedings of Day 2 of the 2nd International Ferroalloys Conference 2019. But the celebrations are still waiting, for which we would request you all to be back here by 7 o'clock, 7 p.m. And we have a very entertaining cultural program lined ahead for you, which will be followed by dinner. And a very important announcement for all our delegates or guests who would be joining us for the evening function to kindly display your name badge, as you would not be allowed inside without identifying yourself. So, ladies and gentlemen, look forward to seeing all of you at 7 p.m. for the cultural event and dinner. Thank you.